Fame, fortune, and the spotlight. These are the things you expect from an American's Got Talent winner. But Richard Goodall's life after his win isn't exactly a Hollywood story. Today, we reveal how his lifestyle has shifted in ways no one could have guessed. Richard Goodall's story is all about dreaming big and how amazing things can happen even to the most ordinary people. Richard grew up in a small town called Terre Haute in Indiana. He had a simple life with his family in a modest home. Ever since he was a little boy, music was the one thing that made him the happiest. Richard had a Radio Shack stereo, which was like his best friend. He would spend hours in his room, listening to music and singing along to his favorite songs. Even though he was just a kid in a small town, Richard dreamed of singing on a big stage in front of thousands of people. As Richard got older, he had to put those big dreams aside. Life became more about working and paying bills. After he finished high school, he needed to find a stable job so he could take care of himself. Going to college wasn't an option for Richard, so he decided to work as a janitor. He didn't mind the work because it was steady and reliable. He got a job at Chauncey Rose Middle School, which was just a few blocks from his childhood home. Richard worked there for 23 years, making sure the school was clean and safe for the kids and teachers. Even though being a janitor wasn't the dream he had when he was younger, Richard still took pride in his work. But Richard never forgot about his love for music. Even while he worked, he couldn't stop singing. As he cleaned the hallways or mopped the floors, his voice filled the empty classrooms. Students and teachers noticed how good he was, and they loved listening to him sing. His voice made everyone feel happy. Soon, Richard became known as the singing janitor. Even though his job wasn't fancy, his talent made him stand out. Richard also sang at school events. One of his favorite performances was during Veterans Day celebrations. He would sing "God Bless the USA" by Lee Greenwood, and his voice always gave everyone chills. The kids at the school adored him and started calling him Mr. Richard out of respect and affection. The teachers were also impressed, and they often told Richard that he had a special gift. One day in 2022, something incredible happened that would change Richard's life forever. During one of the school events, the teachers encouraged Richard to pick a song that would really showcase his talent. Richard decided to sing "Don't Stop Believin'" by Journey, a song that had always meant a lot to him. As Richard sang, his powerful voice filled the room, and a teaching assistant recorded his performance. Later, she posted the video on TikTok for fun, thinking maybe a few people would enjoy it. What happened next was beyond anyone's expectations. The video quickly went viral. By the next day, it had over 100,000 views. By the end of the weekend, more than 1 million people had watched Richard sing. People from all over the world left comments, praising his voice and how passionate he was. Even members of the band Journey saw the video and left comments, including Steve Perry, the original singer of "Don't Stop Believin'." Everyone was amazed by Richard's talent. As more and more people saw the video, it caught the attention of the producers of America's Got Talent, AGT. They reached out to Richard and invited him to audition for the show. Richard couldn't believe it. The janitor who used to sing in the school hallways was now being asked to perform on one of the biggest stages in the world. It felt like a dream come true. Richard accepted the invitation, though he was nervous. He couldn't believe that this was happening to him. 2 years after his viral video, on May 27th, Richard stood in front of the AGT judges, Simon Cowell, Sofia Vergara, Heidi Klum, and Howie Mandel. The stage was huge and the lights were bright, but Richard wasn't going to let his nerves stop him. He took a deep breath and began to sing "Don't Stop Believin'." His performance was stunning. The crowd cheered loudly, and the judges all gave him a standing ovation. They couldn't believe that a janitor from a small town could have such an amazing voice. Heidi Klum was so touched by Richard's story and his singing that she pressed the golden buzzer. Golden confetti rained down around Richard, marking a huge moment in his life. The golden buzzer meant that he was going straight to the live shows, skipping the other rounds. Richard stood on stage, overwhelmed with joy, barely able to believe what had just happened. After that moment, Richard's life changed in ways he never imagined. As he prepared for the live shows, people across the country began to follow his journey. Richard's story wasn't just about a man with a great voice. It was about hope, perseverance, and the idea that you should never give up on your dreams, no matter how impossible they seem. Richard was proof that dreams could come true, even for someone who had spent more than 20 years as a janitor in a small town. Even though Richard was now a rising star, he didn't let it change who he was. He stayed grounded and kept working hard. He didn't forget the people who had supported him, especially the students and teachers at Chauncey Rose Middle School. In fact, his team helped him pick songs for the live shows that would show off his vocal range and touch people's hearts. The staff at AGT also made sure that Richard had everything he needed, from technical help with social media to emotional support during the intense competition. Back in Terre Haute, Richard's hometown was buzzing with excitement. People organized watch parties to cheer cheer him on, and made sure everyone voted for him during the live shows. The whole community came together to support their local hero. They were proud of Richard, not just because of his talent, but because he showed that anything was possible if you kept believing. As the live shows got closer, Richard couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and nerves. He knew that this was his big chance, and he didn't want to let anyone down. But no matter what happened in the competition, Richard knew that his future was bright. Even if he didn't win, the doors to the music world had already been opened for him. People wanted to hear more from him, and offers to perform in concerts and record albums started pouring in. Despite all the attention and fame, Richard remained the same humble person he had always been. He loved his community and wanted to continue inspiring others, especially the students who had always looked up to him. Richard dreamed of balancing his new music career with his life at Chauncey Rose Middle School. He didn't just want to be known as a famous singer. He wanted to be remembered as someone who followed his dreams while also giving back to his community. In interviews, Richard often shared his message of hope and perseverance. He encouraged people to put down their phones, spend time with loved ones, and never give up on their passions. His story was a reminder that amazing things can happen to anyone at any time. It didn't matter if you were a janitor, a teacher, or a student. Everyone had the potential to achieve their dreams. Richard Goodall's journey from a singing janitor to a national sensation wasn't just about getting famous. It was about the power of music, the strength of community, and the importance of never giving up. As Richard stood on the AGT stage, surrounded by applause and golden confetti, he knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in his life. There were many more songs to sing and many more people to inspire. Richard had proven that no matter where you start, the best is always yet to come. After Richard Goodall's remarkable performance on America's Got Talent in 2024, his life transformed overnight. The golden buzzer moment was unforgettable, but what followed was an even more exciting and unexpected chapter. Winning AGT was not just a victory in a competition, but the start of a whirlwind of opportunities that would change Richard's life in ways he had never imagined. The first few days after the AGT finale were a blur for Richard. He had spent over 2 decades working as a school janitor, and now he was being recognized everywhere he went. Fans approached him for autographs. Kids who had watched his performances on TV excitedly shouted his name, and people from all over the country sent him messages of support and admiration. The quiet, humble man from Terre Haute, Indiana was now a household name, and while it was thrilling, it also took some time for Richard to adjust to this new reality. One of the first things Richard did after winning AGT was visit Chauncey Rose Middle School, where he had worked for over 20 years. His co-workers and students were waiting for him with a surprise celebration, and the school gym was filled with banners, balloons, and signs that read, "Welcome home, Mr. Richard." The students chanted his name, and as he entered the gym, he couldn't help but feel emotional. This was where his journey began, and these were the people who had supported him long before the rest of the world knew his name. Richard gave a heartfelt speech to the students and staff, thanking them for their unwavering support. He told them that no matter how far he had come, he would never forget his roots. His voice cracked with emotion as he said, "This school is where I found my voice, and this community is where I found my strength. I hope my story shows all of you that dreams can come true, no matter where you start." But as much as Richard loved the school and the students, his life was now pulling him in new directions. After winning AGT, Richard was bombarded with offers from record labels, concert promoters, and even movie producers who wanted him to star in documentaries about his life. The world wanted to hear more of his voice, and Richard knew that this was his chance to fully pursue the music career he had always dreamed of. Soon after the AGT finale, Richard signed a record deal with a major label. The label saw immense potential in his unique blend of classic rock and soulful ballads, and they worked with him to craft an album that would showcase his incredible voice. The album, titled "Believin' Again," was a mix of original songs and covers of some of his favorite classics. For Richard, this was more than just an album. It was the realization of a dream he had carried with him since he was a child, singing along to his Radio Shack stereo in his bedroom. The process of recording the album was a new and exciting experience for Richard. He spent weeks in a state-of-the-art studio in Los Angeles, working with some of the best producers and musicians in the industry. At first, Richard felt out of place in the glitzy world of Hollywood, but the moment he stepped into the recording booth, all of his nerves disappeared. This was where he belonged. The studio became a second home to him, and he poured his heart and soul into every track. While Richard was busy recording, the world outside was buzzing with anticipation for his debut album. Fans eagerly awaited its release, and his social media following grew by the thousands every day. Richard's team managed his accounts, but he made sure to interact with fans personally whenever he could. He wanted to stay connected to the people who had supported him from the beginning. Richard often shared behind-the-scenes clips from the studio, and fans loved getting a glimpse of his journey from janitor to recording artist. One of the most exciting moments for Richard came when he was invited to perform at some of the most prestigious venues in the country. His first major concert was at the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, Tennessee, a stage that had been graced by some of the greatest musicians in history. Walking onto that stage was a surreal experience for Richard, and as he looked out at the packed audience, he felt the weight of how far he had come. Richard's performance at the Grand Ole Opry was a resounding success. He sang a mix of songs from his new album and some of the classics that had become his signature pieces, like Journey's Don't Stop Believin'. The audience erupted in applause after every song, and when he finished his set, the crowd gave him a standing ovation that seemed to last forever. Richard was overwhelmed with emotion. He had dreamed of moments like this for so long, and now they were happening for real. After his concert at the Grand Ole Opry, Richard embarked on a nationwide tour. From Los Angeles to New York City, people came to hear the singing janitor who had won their hearts on America's Got Talent. Every night, Richard stood on stage in front of thousands of people, and every night, he was reminded of how lucky he was to be living his dream. But even as he traveled from city to city, performing in front of adoring crowds, Richard never forgot where he came from. Between tour stops, Richard made sure to visit Terre Haute as often as possible. He stayed connected to his community and continued to give back in any way he could. One of the most heartwarming moments after his AGT victory came when Richard announced that he was starting a scholarship fund for students at Chauncey Rose Middle School. The fund, which he called the Believe In Fund, was created to help students who dreamed of pursuing music but didn't have the financial means to do so. The scholarship fund was a huge success, and it wasn't long before Richard was able to help several students attend music camps, buy instruments, and even apply to music programs at colleges and universities. For Richard, this was one of the most fulfilling parts of his new life. He knew firsthand how important it was to have someone believe in you, and he wanted to be that person for the next generation of musicians. In addition to his scholarship fund, Richard became a passionate advocate for arts education. He traveled to schools across the country, speaking to students about the importance of following their passions, no matter the obstacles. He shared his own story, encouraging them to never give up, even if the odds seemed stacked against them. Richard's message resonated with students everywhere, and he quickly became a beloved figure, not just in the music world, but in education as well. As Richard's career continued to soar, he also found time to explore other creative ventures. One of the most exciting opportunities came when he was approached by a documentary film director who wanted to tell Richard's story in a feature-length film. The documentary, titled From Janitor to Star, The Richard Goodall Story, followed Richard's journey from his days cleaning the halls of Chauncey Rose Middle School to his triumphant win on America's Got Talent. The film featured interviews with Richard's family, friends, and former co-workers, as well as behind-the-scenes footage from his time on AGT and his recording sessions for Believin' Again. The documentary premiered at several major film festivals, and audiences were deeply moved by Richard's story. It was a reminder that no dream was too big and that with enough perseverance, anything was possible. Despite all the fame and success, Richard remained the same humble, kind-hearted person he had always been. He continued to stay grounded, always remembering the people and places that had shaped him. He stayed in touch with the staff at Chauncey Rose Middle School, often visiting them whenever he was back in town. And every Veterans Day, he made sure to return to the school to sing God Bless the USA, just as he had done for so many years before. Richard Goodall's life after America's Got Talent was a whirlwind of success, but it was also a testament to the power of staying true to yourself. Even as he performed in front of thousands of fans, recorded hit albums, and starred in documentaries, Richard never lost sight of who he was. He was the janitor who loved music, the man who believed in chasing his dreams no matter how impossible they seemed. And for Richard, the journey was just beginning. He knew that there were many more songs to sing, many more stages to stand on, and many more people to inspire. But no matter where his career took him next, Richard Goodall would always carry with him the lessons he had learned along the way, that dreams, no matter how big, are always worth believing in.